Just a little bit about me. My name's Jacobus. I am a stuntman and motion capture performer, and I do stunt coordination for video games. I'm also the founder of a company called Super Alloy Interactive, and we'll talk a little bit more about what we do. But my main claim to fame is that I did the stunts for God of War 2018 for Kratos and various other characters. Does anybody know what motion capture is? Everybody heard of this? Put the suit on, it's got the balls on it, it's kind of funny looking. Made of Velcro, makes you look really goofy. But when it goes into a video game, it looks really cool because then I get to look like Kratos, and that's awesome. So that was my big sort of entry into the games industry. And then after that, I got to do Mortal Kombat 11 at NetherRealm, did a bunch of characters for that, both gameplay and the cinematics. And then I also did the main character for Demon's Souls, the re-release for PS5. And our company, Super Alloy, I started that around that time period, and we did all of a good amount of the motion capture for God of War Ragnarok, the gameplay section at our studio in Las Vegas. And here's a little bit of more of what we did. We've done Mortal Kombat 1, some Call of Duty, Horizon. You can see superalloyinteractive.com. And also, I'm an author. My book is called If These Fists Could Talk. I'm selling copies, and I'll autograph them for you. They're $13, and I'll sell them to you here if you would like to buy one, too. And it's all about kind of this story and the science of action design. It's going to get a little bit gruesome because it's also the science of violence. If anybody's squeamish about violence, fair warning, there's a lot of it. But it's fun, I promise, and scientific. Cool. So I was born and raised American, grew up on Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. I had no plans on becoming a stuntman, though, but I loved action movies when I was a kid. Of course, all of us sort of dream about being the person that we watch on camera to some extent, right? Never really thought that that would be possible. I don't have the same sort of physique as Arnold. I'm pretty close, I think. I'm pretty close, but I'm more built like a cinder block, I think. Also loved martial art movies as a kid. I always felt like, you know, the 80s was a great period for American martial arts because of Van Damme sort of invented the kicking shape, sort of made martial arts make sense to a lot of us. A lot of us had never seen this stuff before, right? Like a kick. What is a kick? Kind of knew Chuck Norris, but Van Damme made it beautiful. He sort of turned the kick into a comic book move, you know what I mean? And of course, I watched Bruce Lee a lot. And Bruce Lee was much more, to me, much more of the attitude of martial arts. That wasn't really me. You know, Bruce Lee's kind of angry. I'm a dad now, so I get it. But when I was a kid, nah, not really. It wasn't really for me. But I loved how he moved. I loved how he was very kind of American also. It really sort of spoke to a lot of us. And of course, Chuck Norris. But really, the thing I grew up on the most was vaudeville. I grew up on a lot of, Chaplin, Buster Keaton, Harold Lloyd, W.C. Fields. So I loved my action with humor because what I love about Chaplin and Jackie Chan is that they could tell a story with their bodies in a way that, I don't know, I didn't quite get the same feeling from Chuck so much. These guys could just kind of stand in the middle of a room and be vulnerable and tell a story. And that was very compelling to me. I think a lot of us might feel this way too. You know, it's not so much about your face, it's much more about just your body, right? Again, no interest in doing movies though. I wanted to be a scientist. I was a math nerd. I wanted to work in a particle accelerator someday. I was a programmer at 15. Programmed Visual Basic, C++, JavaScript, Cold Fusion, if anybody remembers this stuff back in the day. But then when I was 16, things changed. I saw my first Jackie Chan movie, and it was called Police Story. It was on the USA Network for some reason, and in 1998, this is sort of unheard of in a small town anyway. And it was this scene that I saw. I'm going to put it on real quick. Oops, I just skipped it. Here we go. And what I want you to watch is just the physicality and the bodies. So what did you see when when you saw that? Anybody have any observations? I'm curious what you saw.
A lot of weird, I guess weird is the word, like movement, joint bending, things like that.
Uh-huh.
A lot of popping.
Uh-huh. It's so physical. It's so damn physical. Like when I saw this when I was 16, it was like I was watching a different language. It was hard to explain, right? Because growing up on vaudeville and Arnold Schwarzenegger, you kind of have this idea of what movement should look like. And something like this, it's like a foreign language. I couldn't quite wrap my head around it. And I really wanted to do that. It's kind of like, it's probably like when certain kids see dancing, they saw Michael Jackson, they saw the way Michael Jackson moved, they said, I want to move like that. And probably there's some level of self-exploration in that. And for me, it was understanding people. How is it that people on the other side of the planet move this way, but people on my side of the planet move that way, right? I really wanted to understand that. My question was, could I do that? So at first what I did was because I was a website developer, and this is in 1998, by the way, when making a website meant opening up Notepad and typing out a website. I went and got tons of Hong Kong action films and reviewed them, 250 of them. I was so obsessed with this new thing, it just became this, well, it was an obsession. I'd go to Chinatown, I'd spend all my computer programming money on video CDs, bring them back, review them, and analyze the fights to death. Frame by frame, I was looking at how they built these action scenes. I was analyzing who the stunt performers were, what their backgrounds were. I got really nerdy with it. But I actually had no idea how to do any of that. Here's an example of one of the webs. This is a 1998 website, everybody. This was recently unearthed in Israel, I think. They dug up an old mountain. Just kidding. And also, at that time period, in the late 90s, this is actually a really exciting time in America because all of these Hong Kong choreographers like Yuen Woo-ping were coming over to America and making action films like The Matrix. And this movie blew our minds because I don't think any of us had ever seen an American martial art movie that looked like that. It made no sense, right? And again, it was sort of like that language had come to the United States. And so in my mind, it made sense that, okay, well, if I actually wanted to work in Hollywood, if I learned this Hong Kong style of filmmaking, the home of Jackie Chan, Yuen Woo-ping, Michelle Yeoh, if I learned how to do that, I could make it in stunts. I could actually work in movies. So I started my own action team. I was very inspired, by the way, by skateboard videos. A lot of my friends were skaters growing up, and I loved skate videos because Thrasher magazine had this thing where basically if you send in your skate tape, you might be featured, right? Skate videos and surf videos too. We're sort of like the first, it was like, it's hard to explain like what that meant, that you could become a star with a camera and no crew, right? Like, you know, cameras have a handle on top. And I believe that the reason they put that handle on top was for these guys. So we took that same thing and made our own action movies in the year 2001. I started a stunt team called the Stunt People. We made a ton of these like low-budget action movies where we were just doing whatever we could. And I didn't know how to fight. I had no martial arts experience. That's me. I didn't have a beard back then. But I could fall on the ground. I could hit the concrete. And what we were doing was we were trying to find this language, right? This Hong Kong movement language, whatever that was. And what we found was that the more we sort of cooperated with each other to make cool looking moves, it's kind of like a dance, it's kind of like having a dance partner. The better we cooperated, the better the shapes were, right? And so that was our stab at this, and we thought we were on the right track. And then this happened. The Bourne Identity comes out. I'm going to show you this scene from Bourne Identity. This is in 2002. So what did you guys see in that?
It's a bit more impressionistic. You don't see it as precise.
Yep. It's emotional, kind of, right? It's almost like the style. To me, when I see that, I feel like the filmmaker is trying to bring out an emotion using the camera and editing. They're not really showing what the performers are doing. And that bothered me. I thought that's the wrong action style. Here's the thing. Hollywood started going in that direction. And the Bourne Identity style became the style of action. And that was really disheartening because at the time, I was auditioning for, a short, low-budget Hollywood film every now and then, but they started asking questions like, do you know how to do the Bourne style? And so my Hollywood career seemed to be it was almost like I didn't want to go into this world anymore. I just wanted to work at my craft. So that's what I did. I just stuck with it and started doing indie action films. I produced a feature film in 2006 called Contour. You can watch this online on YouTube. This is a 95-minute movie. We made it for $5,000, and we really started working at this cooperative kind of Hong Kong action style. And then did these series of films called Rope It Up 1 and 2, and this is sort of the culmination of this style, working at this for years, working day jobs, and just sort of working at my craft. And here's a little clip from Rope It Up 2, and you can watch this on YouTube as well. And that's me with the cane. So, that was the culmination of 15 years of trying to study this Hong Kong style of movement, which I call Hong Kong Punch, because I see it as a language, and I'm going to explain what that means and how that applies to video games. So then I did this little thing called Tekken in real life. I copied Tekken moves in my garage, and that was just a sort of way to keep myself in shape. And then I got a call from Sony, and they asked me to come in and audition to do Kratos for God of War 2018. So this was back in about 2016. They worked on this game for a long time. That's how game development is now. You work on the game for 5 years. Can't talk about it until the game comes out. And this experience was incredible, but something about it, I did not expect how difficult this would be, and here's why. So when they brought me in, I'm just gonna, let me just hold on this here. When they brought me in to do Kratos, and when you're in a motion capture studio, it's all white. So if you're doing a scene in snow, there's no snow on the ground. You don't get to get into character. You're not wearing a costume. You're wearing this ugly Velcro suit with balls on it, right? So one of the moves, and by the way, when I say that I was doing motion capture, I was doing the gameplay, right? So in the game, when you hit attack and you swing the axe as Kratos, that's this move that I'm going to show you, right? And it's very quick. It's 2 seconds long. There's another kind of motion capture called performance capture, which is all the cinematic scenes. Now, Kratos in those scenes is doing lines, he's acting. That's not me. That's Chris Judge. I'm the stuntman for the game. Chris Judge, he's my acting double. Don't tell him that. So I'm doing the action in the game and also the cinematics. When it was Kratos, usually it was me. Or if Kratos was too big, if Kratos was fighting a smaller guy, I was a smaller guy, because I'm 5'6". I'm 5'9", I mean, on my IMDb, but I'm actually 5'6". So, anyway, motion capture, gameplay capture. That's what they brought me in to do. So one of the moves was a punch. They actually started out with just doing melee attacks without the axe. Right? That was my first day. And they said, okay, Eric, do a punch. Now, bear in mind, I had come from that Jackie Chan style of action. So a punch, a Jackie Chan style punch, it looks like this. That's a Jackie Chan punch. Now, notice I don't really move off of my mark because the other guy's here, and if I move off my mark, I displace him. That can be very difficult, right? In a Hong Kong fight scene, you're doing a lot of moves, right? So it's not just one punch. It's going to be like this. You're doing a whole bunch of moves in series, right? That's the Hong Kong style. So that's the punch I did. And they said, oh boy, this is not going to work. I said, what's wrong? I've been doing stunts for 15 years. I know how to throw a punch. They said, no, that's not the kind of punch that we want in this game. That looks like a martial art punch. Well, what other kind of punch is there? This is me speaking as a martial artist. I thought that a punch was supposed to be a martial arts move. It has to be good technique. Can't be seen by the other person. I mean, the point of martial arts is to not let your moves be seen. I thought a punch should look like that. That's a good punch, right? No, that's not the purpose of God of War. The purpose of God of War is to show the player that you're building up for a punch, step into the place where you're going to punch, otherwise the hitbox isn't going to work, right? Because the enemy's here. If you punch here, you're not going to be able to hit that enemy, right? They'll have to slide me. And that's animation work. Animators don't want to have to do that if they don't have to. So I have to step before I punch. And I'm already going, hold on. You want me to step and punch? That is not in any martial art that I know. Yes, that's what we want you to do. This is, this is your chance to work on God of War, sir. If you want to do this, you need to do that. And so I learned how to go from this to this. And that became the Kratos movement. It's that kind of movement language change that I had to learn for every single move. And that included axe swings, it included straight punches, it included left hooks. Same thing with the left hook. If I want to do a left hook, I could probably plant my left foot first, or I could plant my right foot, go back. So I had to relearn how to move. And that's actually much harder than it sounds because I was so used to cooperating with my opponent. Now there's no more cooperation. Now I was just acting as this character. And every time I did a move, I sort of had to play a story out in my head, right? Because it's not just the punch. There's also this part after the punch that matters. Watch. You see that last little bit at the end? When you go back to idle, the idle stance. This is what happens when you're not touching the controller. He just stands there. It's more like this. When you go back to the idle stance, you have to look like you're ready for combat. And that goes for every character in the game, too. So if you're doing, I was also motion capturing NPCs. I did Baldur. I did Magni Modi. So when these guys go back to idle, they also have to look like they're ready for combat. And so after doing that for about a year, felt like I kind of figured this out. Then I got another call. Word got around that Eric can do mocap. This little game called Demon's Souls. They say, hey, can you come over and do motion capture? Same studio, actually, same location. And I go in. I'm not going to show that yet. I go in, and they say, okay, so we hear you're really good at mocap. Do a punch. Okay, I know how to punch. Been doing Kratos for a year. I do that. And they say, oh boy, this isn't going to work. And I'm like, well, what now? What do you guys want? I thought that was the way you throw a punch. And they said, this is a Japanese game. And I'm like, hold on, wait a minute. Does that actually matter? And they said, yes. The Japanese movement style is much more about the end pose, the end of the movement. And that blew my mind, because now it was no longer about this big character in a big swing and a big follow through and a big, aggressive return to idle, like an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, right? I had learned how to move like an American, by the way. I sort of like re-taught myself American movement. But that wasn't going to work for this Japanese game. It had to be a Japanese style of movement, which was much more like this. That was the kind of punch that they wanted. So after doing that for about a year, basically figured out how to move in a Japanese way, which is very different, completely different. So, and then also, I got to do my Hong Kong action style, which is very easy. It's very comfy and cozy for me to go and do Mortal Kombat 11. I did gameplay and cinematics too. This is a Shang Tsung cinematic. I think this might have been the DLC, I'm not sure. But again, this is the exact same thing that I was doing in indie films. This is, for me, this is a cakewalk. So what I found was that it was really hard to go from one game to the other, because I was doing them all at the same time. I was going from doing this big American character-driven punch to the Japanese style punch to the Hong Kong punch. And it was like going from English to Chinese to Japanese to English to Chinese to Japanese. And every now and then I have to go, oh, sorry, I meant to say da-da-da, and I have to replay it in my head. And what I came up with was a way to more easily transition between these different kinds of movement. And I call it movement language. And as I was doing this, by the way, I noticed that I appreciated American action scenes more. I started seeing the character and movement, because I was such a Hong Kong purist. All I wanted to see was the camera pulled back and the two guys doing the dance. That's what I wanted to see. But after doing God of War, I started looking at like Chuck Norris's face. I know that sounds strange, but I never did that before. But then I started looking at him, trying to read the story of his movements. Then I started watching Japanese action films and realizing, oh my gosh, these fights are lethal, and I understand why. I started appreciating these things more. And what I found is that there's the same language in all of these other films. So I call it movement language, and this is how I broke it down. This is called the 5 stages of movement. I put this on my YouTube channel too. There are 5 pieces to the move, to any move really, but this is, I'm applying it to motion capture. This is our stage in Vegas. There's the in point, which is your idle, right? There's the anticipation, which comes before the hit. There's the hit itself, which is the hit box. There's the recovery after the hit, and the out point, which goes either into the next move or to idle. So I started watching more action films and trying to understand this language. And here's what I started asking the developers too. So I was working with, sometimes Chinese developers, American developers, Japanese developers, and I would ask them, one guy, Kento, I worked with Kento on Mafia 3, and he had animated on Tekken 4. And I asked Kento, is there a connection between the Japanese language and Japanese movement style? Or what I call Japanese punch? And I'm going to show you that I believe there is a connection between American movement style and the English language, the Hong Kong's movement style and the Chinese language, and the Japanese movement style and the Japanese language. In the Hong Kong punch, I broke it down as a very fast antic, fast hitbox, fast recovery. Right? And you see it with Jackie Chan movies, Sammo Hung. It's the same sort of style that we were talking about earlier, right? We covered that. The American punch, much bigger windup. This is the Harrison Ford punch, right? Beautiful thing about Harrison Ford is he sort of displaces whoever he's punching and he takes their place. I kind of love that about his punches, right? He just kind of walks into the guy as he's punching. That's the American punch. That was what I learned as Kratos. And then, of course, the Japanese punch. the anticipation that you can't really read, and a really strong outpose during the recovery stage, and sort of a steady transition back to idle. And that's the same thing with Iaido when I was taking Japanese sword, and it's exactly what you see in Japanese samurai films. So, my question, does language influence violence, or the movement language? Or is it vice versa? So, American English, rounded, we interrupt each other a lot. Cantonese, monosyllabic, rhythmic, they also interrupt each other a lot. Japanese, there's a verb at the end of the sentence. This is the thing about Japanese that's very hard. If anybody's taken Japanese, has anybody taken Japanese before? Japanese is a hard language because it's subject, object, verb format. In English, we say, the dog bit the man, right? And by the time you say bit, you can kind of guess at what's going to happen. But in Japanese, you have to say, as for the dog, the man as the object bit. You don't really know what the sentence is about, what the action is, until the end of the sentence. The predicate's at the end. It resists interruption. And that's probably why, among the many reasons, why Japanese people tend not to interrupt each other, because you don't know what the word's going to be at the end. So I'll give you an example here. So in English, if I say, I will kill you because you owe me money,
I will kill you because you owe me money.
right? By the time I say I will kill you, you kind of know that you don't want to be around me anymore and you want to take off, right? We don't have to wait until the end to find out if what I'm going to do to you. Chinese, very similar. This is Cantonese.
我會殺你，因為你欠我錢。
Right? 我會殺. Sat means chop. I'm going to chop you. By the time you get to sat, you're running away. Right? You don't have to wait till the end of the sentence. But here's Japanese. Notice how much longer it takes to say I'm going to kill you in Japanese too.
君は私に借金があるから君を殺してやる。
Okay, so by the time you're at the end of the sentence, you know that you shouldn't be around this person anymore, right? And it's also the same with a negative, right? If you say, I won't kill you because you owe me money, by the time all I have to say is, I won't kill, and you know you're safe.
I won't kill you because you owe me
Right?
money.
And it's the same with Cantonese. 我唔會殺你, you'll hear it.
我唔會殺你，因為你欠我錢。
That's a no. I won't kill. Great, you're not going to kill me. I'll stick around. I'm going to talk to you. In Japanese, you don't know if the person's going to actually kill you or not until after the verb. Here it is again.
借金があるからって殺したりしないよ。
You don't know until shinai. Nai is no. No is at the end of the sentence. So Japanese has this ramping effect in the language where you don't really know the full implications of the sentence until the very end. It resists interruption. So let's look at some fight scenes and see if that language plays out. I have here 3 elevator fights from America, Hong Kong, and Japan. First one's from Total Recall. What did you guys see with that one?
It kind of predicts, like, you kind of know what's going to happen, like, right before it's happening.
Very predictable, yes. The face says everything. The moves are heavy. You know, even though they're in that small spot, it's like it's too cramped for them. Like it's like not enough space, right? And they play that really well. That's why I picked it. Next scene is Hong Kong. This is from Donnie Yen's Ip Man 3. What do you notice about that one? Unknown, unpredictability. And you see a lot of improvisation too from Donnie Yen, right? He's also managed to keep a third person in that elevator and keep her from all, and that's all done with these close insert shots and slow motion. It's very cooperative, right? In the Total Recall fight, Arnold couldn't do that. That's why he left the girl down below. But in this one, in the Hong Kong style, you can get away with it. So let's look now at a Japanese fight. Oh, do I not have a Japanese fight? Well, we'll just look at this one. I thought I had an elevator fight, but I don't. But this is a classic fight scene from Sanjuro. That standoff lasts, I think, 30 seconds. And it's just one move. Again, not interruptible. And so there are some interesting sort of what seem like exceptions to this, right? So the Gunslinger film actually plays a lot more like the Japanese samurai film. So there's a caveat with this, which is that when we're talking about character and big character movement, I'm really talking about the bar fight in American action cinema. The Gunslinger duel is much more like the Japanese style. But the bar fight is only possible, I think, because of the gun. In Japan, they did not have guns during the shogunate. They got rid of them. They abandoned the gun at one point. So the bar fight was not really possible in Japan. You only had the samurai fight. Because the bar fight's possible because the bartender can stand back there with a shotgun and say, yeah, go ahead, have fun. Just don't do anything stupid, right? Japan didn't have a bar fight. That's why I think there's no bar fighting culture in Japanese action cinema. That said, American gunslinger films, what do they have that Japanese samurai films don't? The close-up on the eyes. That's what's different. So again, it's this American kind of character-driven focus on action films. I'm going to jump ahead to a few more examples just real quick. In Hong Kong action, when they start introducing the less traditional kickboxing style, it's still the same kind of cooperation. They're still standing around exchanging blows. This is almost like unheard of in Japanese action cinema. They don't do that so much. And you definitely see the cooperation in Hong Kong action cinema. Now let's also look at Japanese kaiju action. Kaiju action, of course, is probably some kind of reaction to the nuclear bomb. The monster, the kaiju, is a sort of, it's a sort of living example of a bomb. It destroys cities, sort of takes a kind of experience of living through a nuclear war or a nuclear bomb that could produce a film like this. I don't think that this would make as much sense somewhere else, but to the average Japanese viewer, I think this made a lot of sense. So there is a certain language to kaiju movement that makes sense in Japan. And that's not necessarily baked into the language. This is a Hong Kong kaiju movie, and you'll see it's very different. They tend to stand around, throw punches and kicks, do flips. There's not so much emphasis on destroying cities, right? That wasn't really the code. Sorry?
One of my favorite movies, actually.
The Inframan? Inframan's classic. It's an old Shaw Brothers movie. So now when I go back and I think about Bourne, and I rewatch Bourne, I try and approach it as an American, if that makes any sense. You could probably also approach it as a European. There's like a lot of kind of European new wave style filmmaking in this movie. And so I just look at the faces, I look at the moments. And I enjoy it a lot more as a result. So my takeaway here, and what I've learned from doing motion capture, is that action, and I believe violence overall, is a language. It's sort of like, you could almost say that it's a sub-language, but we just saw examples where violence seems to actually subvert language. The traditional Japanese language could not anticipate Godzilla, right? There seems to be something about violence, human violence, that has meaning and a sort of grammar to it. And I think that that's really different than what we've been led to believe. We tend to be told that violence is base, that it's not evolved, that it's like part of the lower chimp brain. I'm not convinced that's true. I think that violence is much more meaningful than we give it credit for. And so here's just a test that you could do. If you ask an AI system, ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever it is, and you ask them, and they do video now, right? You ask it to render Socrates giving a speech in Greek, it could do it. If you ask it to render Socrates getting punched in the face, it has a very hard time. It can't figure out violence, not even a single punch. Even people just standing and punching at nothing, it has a very hard time with this. I'm not sure that this is a data issue, but it seems as though it doesn't consider violence and movement as a language. And I think that if we were to approach violence and action from a grammatical standpoint, I think we could understand it better. I think we would treat it as something that is actually speakable. There's meaning to it. And I think that that could fundamentally change how we see society. So, you can learn more about this and other ideas on my YouTube channel at Eric Jacobus Official. I have a website, ericjacobus.com. I also have my books for sale. I'm selling them here. It tells all about this movement language and other things about violence and the science of violence. And I'll sign a copy for you also. And we have 5 minutes, so happy to take some questions too. Thank you. Yeah.
I was interested in the kaiju stuff, and they seem to almost fight in the kaiju themselves. The kaiju themselves seem to almost fight in the American style that you were describing, and relate that back to like the nuclear bomb, obviously was from the U.S. Do you see that maybe in there? Or just observation, I guess. I didn't know what you thought about that.
Never thought about that. I wonder if Japanese wrestling comes from that era too, because Japanese wrestling, there's a lot of Japanese flourish to it, but it does play kind of American-like. So yeah, I wonder if it's a post-war thing. It's a good note. I think that seems as though the action codes that are used in movies and games are actually more flexible than the language. I don't think that the Japanese language changed a whole lot aside from introducing a bunch of American words, but as a whole, it's not like they changed their grammar, right? They didn't get rid of kanji. Good observation, yeah.
I know that they did create like an additional language in order to accommodate like, Western ideas.
Yeah, they added the katakana syllabary, right?
Yeah. Like an outside.
Yeah.
To express these outside ideas to Japanese.
Yeah, and a lot of scientific terms use that character set now. However, you notice that the sound variety has not changed. They're not able to pronounce English words any better now than they were 80 years ago. It's still the same phonetic system. And that seems very rigid. It seems as though that doesn't change, but the way that action is designed seems like it could change. I also think that it's possible that just as, for example, the Cantonese dialect that Jackie Chan and they speak in Hong Kong, it has a whole bunch of sounds in it that you can't make in Mandarin. And Mandarin is the mainstream sort of Chinese language. That's the one that is called Chinese, right? But Cantonese has got like twice as many sounds possible. It actually has a higher fidelity of sound. And it's technically older. So it seems as though what happens is that over time, the ability to create sounds declines. That seems to be what's happening. Fewer cases. Anyway, we could go into the whole linguistics angle of this. But what I want to get at is I don't want the same thing to happen with movement, because what I find is that the more sort of almost like the more that action goes in the way of using demonstration martial arts, very acrobatic martial arts, it seems like the language of movement is actually reduced in fidelity, if that makes any sense. That's a different talk. Yeah.
Have you ever considered the idea that martial arts has something tied to dance, music, and other cultural artifacts? Like, you can argue that, well, maybe martial arts are for like Eastern cultures and all that, but you could also look at things like the tango or certain European dances and see how they tie to their language family as well.
That's a great observation. It's especially true in Chinese Kung Fu. If you're not familiar with, like, traditional Chinese shamanism, for example, then the Chinese martial art moves, the very traditional ones, aren't going to make much sense. And there are systems like 7-star praying mantis, right? And 7-star praying mantis, the story is that an old monk watched a praying mantis fight a cicada and beat the cicada doing this move. And it's like he made like a praying mantis move. He went like that. Right? It's like, this is a move, and it became this like martial arts style that kind of looks like this. And there are whole movies that have amazing mantis martial arts in it, right? The thing is that it's called 7-star praying mantis probably because it was originally astrology. And that you would do these movements not to fight, but you would do them as this sort of divination, for spectacle, and a lot of it was wrapped up in dance. So like localized kind of exorcisms, an exorcist would come in, maybe with his buddies, and they do this kind of dance to scare away the demons, and that's where the dance started becoming this martial arts style.